except for last month when we did Father's Day. But this whole month we are moving from the consciousness of surviving, which is why me, through the consciousness of striving, which is by me, where we have to make it happen, into the consciousness of thriving, which is as me and through me. So in the first 2 weeks of June, I talked about the 4 stages of our soul's evolution. 1 is when life happens to me, or we ask, why me? This is our surviving mode. This is when we're just trying to hang on for dear life. Why me? Victim consciousness. 2, we evolve to make things happen. And this is the by me. This is the striving mode, where we get things done through our efforts. This is our surviving, this is our thriving mode. Now, 3 and 4 is when life happens through me or as me. And this is when we are moving into that whole mode of operating that is thriving. And that feels good. There's so much freedom, there's so much joy, and there's so much peace when we're allowing Spirit to move through us and as us. So, thriving defined in a nutshell: being the vehicle through which God fully expresses, and the vehicle through which the seeming impossible becomes possible. That which seems so impossible becomes our reality, because we allow that divine intelligence to move through us. And when we make room, we've got to make room for God, right? Because there's no room for God in surviving. There's no room for God in striving. So when we move into that thriving mode, then there's plenty of room for limitless possibilities. All things are possible. 2 weeks ago, we explored our striving strategies, and we realized that what got me here won't get me there. And if you weren't here, I strongly urge you to look up on YouTube, because there I am giving it. And so it's the second, I'm all over YouTube. This is the second week in June. So if you're interested in hearing about that. The striving will only get us so far. It's by us, remember? We're making it happen. So what got me here won't get me there. So we bless everything. We bless everything that brought us up to this point, right here and right now, and we move into this more expanded level of our divine potential. Remember, we all have divine potential. Maybe someone forgot to tell you this, but it's the true reality of your being. Divine potential is your birthright as a child of the divine, as a child of God. Ernest Holmes defined our divine potential as that spark of divine flame within us. And it feels, if you just open up and you can feel that fire in the heart, as he calls it, it feels really good. That's allowing Spirit to move through us and as us. It moves where we ignite the God spark within. It's so cool when we do that. This is how we move into striving. We move into striving as Spirit is moving through us and as us. So in every one of our striving strategies, there is an assumption. And the assumption is that if I do what I know how to do, if I use my striving strategies, then my life will turn out the way I think it should. And this is always the by me. This is when we are making things happen. Because if we don't do it, no one else will do it, you know? We take this assumption, and it's based on a deeper assumption. And I'd have you all take a deep breath. Because we are about to embark on a journey of perhaps radical change in the way you think about life. It's a different perspective of viewing life. Stepping out of that box of what we're familiar with, what we've been brought up with, what the race consciousness has taught us. And this is, remember, Ernest Holmes says, change your thinking, change your life. So, just to be open, here's the deeper assumption. We assume that things should be a certain way. And when they are that way, everything is fabulous. Everything is wonderful. We're in the flow. We're thriving. We're feeling good. But the flip side is when they don't go the way we think they should go, then we feel that something is terribly wrong. And our world can shatter. The ground feels like it's moved from underneath us. So we start thinking about all these terribly wrong things with me, with you, with all of the above, with everything. If it's gone wrong, we've got to find something to blame. There's got to be a fault. In his book, The Four Agreements, which we do every year over the holidays, through Thanksgiving through Christmas, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about this in his third assumption. Don't take anything personally. No, sorry, that's not it. Never make assumptions, and don't take it personally either. Two have always my most challenging. But we have a tendency to make assumptions about everything. That's what we do. We make these great big stories, these assumptions about everything in life, like they're real. The problem with making these assumptions is that we believe they are the truth, that we could swear they are real. That's what Don Miguel is writing. So if you find yourself living from the assumption that things should be a certain way, they can only be this way. That's like the Course in Miracles, would you rather be right or happy? Well, if you'd rather be right, then you're in that whole striving mode of being. Don't beat yourself up about it if you're in the assumptive mode, because we all are. We go in and out of it. When we wake up, when we feel, when we're connected, then we see clearer. When we allow Spirit to have its way with us, by opening up, by releasing the way it should be, then we can see clearer. But most of the time we're making assumptions about how something should be. This is how they should be. This is how the government should be. This is how the spiritual center should be. This is how everything should be. This person should be this way. But it doesn't work that way in life. We all do it, but why be concerned about this assumption then? If we want to release our surviving and striving strategies and move into that place of thriving, if you really want to do it, then this talk is for you. If you don't, then you don't have to listen. But you're in the room, so it's a captive audience. But we must say goodbye to the assumption that we believe something needs to be a certain way. It needs to be this way. And this is the way that it should be, and it's our way of should be. When we talk of surrender, which is this talk is all about, the last word in surrender, we mean to surrender to God, right? Let go and let God. We hear that. It's one of the greatest affirmations, I believe, that there is. Let go and let God. Very simple. Try it. Try it. Because what does it really mean? What does it really mean to let go and let God? I surrender to God, right? That's what it means. It sounds wonderful. It's like the Dalai Lama said, you can choose to be happy or you can choose to not be happy. Simple. This profound, genius, spiritual leader, that's how he talks. Choose. Would you rather be happy or would you choose to be not happy? Very simple concepts. Let go and let God. So when we surrender to God, we get to the point, okay, I let go, now what? What happens now? And I usually still stay pretty attached to whatever the situation was, how I think the thing should turn out. I let go, I let God, but it's got to be this way. But I still let go and I let God. I've talked today, this talk is called The Last Word in Surrender. Because to truly surrender to God, which is what is required, by the way, to thrive, we must surrender our assumptive notion that life should be any certain way. And when it is that way, it's right. And when it's not that way, it's wrong. This is living. This is living in openness and receptivity to the limitless possibilities which reside within us. But sometimes, to get to that place, we have to go through this really scary other place called the unknown. And if anyone is familiar with the unknown and how you feel about it, it usually brings up all these core fears. But when we realize that really, where are we living every day of our life, every minute of our life, it's always going to be the unknown. So we might think it should be a certain way and should turn out a certain way, but it's the unknown. So it throws the ego off a little bit because we're not in control. But this is where our limitless possibilities reside. This is where they reside, in this space. This is living in the openness, and learn to make peace with it, to embrace the unknown, and know that there's exciting opportunities awaiting us. So there are two hugely limiting factors about living from this assumption of life should be the way it should be, the way I think it should. First is, when we operate from this belief, there is always the need to blame whatever's wrong. And so some people focus on blaming other people. Others accuse it, or they, society, government, the world in general, even God, for causing their problems. And some believe that the cause of their problems is themselves. Whether you look at me, them, or it, the universal paradigm of something is wrong is always from the context where you're going to take action. This is the place where you work so hard to improve yourself. You struggle to manipulate, to charm, or maneuver other people around you. You battle to seek influence on institutions, in groups. And the faster that you make sure that it, them, or me are all heading in the right direction, because that's what we do, right? We have this whole thing, control center within ourselves. The sooner that everybody gets it, then the faster the things seem to happen as they should. And so the more in control that we feel when we have that assumption. When things are, but that's the downside, is when things are going well, you feel like you're winning, succeeding, and even thriving, perhaps. But as soon that's the whole point with this by me striving mode, as soon as something goes wrong, doesn't turn out exactly the way you think it should be, we immediately go into the surviving or the striving mode. So we can be here thriving, thinking everything is done because we are doing it. We're doing everything the way it's supposed to be done. But something doesn't go exactly right. As the rug is pulled out from underneath you, then it's like, well, I gotta go right into surviving. I gotta go right into, I gotta make something else happen. So taking a breath and just relaxing and like that, that's surrender. This is what we're going to be really getting into today. So sometimes we feel that we're spiritually knocked off center. Anybody ever feel like that?
Never.
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 A highly evolved group. And how often do we think, oh, well, I did all my prayer treatment work. I did my affirmative prayer. It's not working. It's just not working. So then we start to question our faith. And we start to question our belief in prayer, that it's not working. So we start to live then in that place of doubt, not trust. So things take place, and we're going to really understand that in a minute, how we can be in a place of peace with that whole by me area and move closer into the thriving by surrendering, truly surrendering what it means. So there is an ancient Chinese story about a young man who thought he had become enlightened. He wrote a poem to his master about how he was no longer blown about by the 8 winds. Then he sent this poem up to his master, who lived 300 miles up the Yangtze River. When his master received the poem, he just simply wrote on the bottom, toot, toot, and sent it back to the student. The more the young man read those words, the more upset he got. At last he decided to visit his master and go that 300 miles up the Yangtze River, which was a very difficult journey by boat. It took many days to get up there. But as soon as he arrived, he went straight to his master, right to the temple, and said, "Why did you write this?" And he was bowing as he said it, out of respect. "Doesn't this poem show you that I am no longer blown around by the 8 winds?" "You say you are no longer blown by the 8 winds," replied the master, "yet 2 little toots blew you all the way up here." I would say that he was spiritually knocked off center pretty easily. And sometimes we find out we're rooted, we're anchored, we've done our classes, we've read our books, we know the truth. And then life happens. Life happens, okay? It happens, stuff happens, and it can blow us totally off. But surrendering means that we give up the way it should be or shouldn't be, then we're grounded. Then we're more in the peace. So the second part of this limiting factor is, even if you're not blaming or knocked off center, when we are so concerned that life turns out the way it should, when we have that thing in our head, this is the way it should be, we refuse to take any chances. We refuse to take any risks. Stretch ourselves a little. Reach outside of the box of possibilities. So we keep ourselves in this small box because it's familiar and we think it's safe. But we're keeping ourselves contracted, not expanded. And this spiritual center and this philosophy, spirituality and religion, is all about expansion. It's about expanding what we think this universal genius is, what we think the infinite possibilities of God really are. We get stuck in this familiar box from which we might have always operated. We've always operated this way. But there are other ways. There are other ways when we take a breath and we realize that there are other ways to function. Being in that box, we can't grow. We can't expand. Not into our divine potential, and we all have divine potential. We can be whatever we want to be. We can express ourselves any way that we want to if we but believe. If we believe. The law works that way. It gives to us what we believe. The way to make the impossible happen, that which looks impossible, the way to really thrive, the way to give God full expression through us, is to be willing to take those risks, what we term as risks, to step outside of that proverbial little box. And that means our comfort zone. Stepping out into what feels uncomfortable. But it is the place where all things are possible. All things are possible in that place. There is complete freedom in releasing the assumption that we can damage our souls. Some of us think if I do it a certain way, oh my goodness, I'll just damage. There's no way we can damage, harm, hinder in any way that essence within us, the soul within us that is our connection to the great I am, to the great spirit, to God itself. Since we've created out of this infinite life force, that's what we've been created out of, where all things are possible. That's stepping out. This is our eternal self that we cannot damage in any way. Our souls are meant to expand because God expands. Our souls are meant to thrive because God is always thriving. There's no lack or limitation in the infinite mind of God, the good, because we believe in the good, not a judgmental God, but God the good. This is the oneness of life, the unity of all that is, and we're all part of it. No one left out. It won't exist unless everybody is part of it, because you all are, whether you realize it or not. Japanese samurai warriors, in reminding themselves of the inevitability of loss, use the phrase, die before going into battle. And this is a practice, and this practice allows the warrior to enter an episode of combat without the fear of death. He has brought upon himself through the experience of the acceptance of death ahead of time. So it's dying before. He had forced himself to look at the fact that his death was a plausible outcome. In this way, the warrior was able to fully give himself to the mission, whatever his mission was, without concern for survival. This made him successful. He was completely free to risk everything because non-attachment. Remember that non-attachment, which is really a tricky and a really sometimes scary and really hard thing to do. Non-attachment. I like my stuff. I'm attached to like my stuff. I mean my physical stuff. I like my stuff, you know. I don't want to let go of my stuff. So it's very hard to move into that place of really letting it go. I know the people who have lost everything in fires and floods. I bet there's a sense of great loss and sadness, but I bet there's a sense of freedom in there too. I bet you anything, because the soul knows. The soul in all of us knows. So, going back to the samurai warrior, such freedom made all the difference between defeat and victory. He had nothing to lose. And remember the final line of our quote from John Randolph Price's book that we used the 2 weeks prior, I am free because I know who I am. Do we ever think, who am I? Really? Who am I? I'm an expression of the great I am. So all of my gifts, all of my talents are unique unto me. We need to honor ourselves, respect ourselves, and know that we have gifts that no one else has. No one has our way of expressing these gifts, of showing these gifts in this planet, on this world, at this time. So finally, there's, we said that. And then who am I? Who am I? An internal being under the influence of divine government. I love this because who is the CEO? There is only one CEO, and that's God. God is the CEO, and we are all part of that company. I love having God as my CEO. Knowing that there's a higher power, and that power is for good. And that power is governing me and everyone else. And I allow it because I know it's for my highest and best good. It's better than anything I could think of in my left brain world, the hemisphere of my left brain. So the great creator, the infinite genius that is God, is unified because it created out of itself, so it's all a great field of unity. When you hear that word, know what it means, that your soul is connected to a greater soul, the infinite soul, God itself. So what we must do to free ourselves from the illusion that we can control life, because you do know it's an illusion, right? Right? we think we can control things so that they can turn out the way they should. We cannot control the way things turn out. We can only control how we show up, how we respond to what is, how we choose to respond. Do our work, our spiritual work, and our work in the world, and then realize that life simply turns out the way it turns out. And there are so many variables in life, they're out of our control. They're out of our control. We can control everything. We can control our thinking, our emotions, that we have control over, but life is that isness, and I love isness. Because life is. Stuff happens. going to keep on happening. Ernest Holmes writes in his book, Living the Science of Mind, one may die from one experience and be born into another in this world. We are learning how to do this by mentally letting go of the old and taking hold of the new. And in this thing called You, one of my personal favorites, he wrote, you do the choosing, the law does the outlining. Hear that, because everyone is like with the specific and the outline, and I'm confused and using this, because this is a very practical spirituality. We teach it in the classes so you can use it. So you do the choosing, but the law of cause and effect, all the great laws, the law of attraction, does the outlining. And I'm going to quote from him. This is the distinction between choice and outline. If you choose a plant, if you choose to plant a tomato seed, you have chosen a tomato plant. But you do not outline how many leaves it should have, how it should grow, or how many stalks it shall have. That belongs to the law of cause and effect. So you plant the seed, and you let the law take care. It's the same with our thinking, with our intentions, with our emotions. We're planting seeds into this infinite substance of law that we can't see, but it's there because we get back what we put out into it. So if we put out into it something we don't want, well, you're going to keep getting the thing you don't want right back again. We have set in motion our intention by planting the seed of our thought. That's how powerful we are. We create our lives. But then we let go. Then we let go and let the law do the outlining. We don't have to outline how it should look, how it should be. And you can do that in cars, you can do that in houses, you can do that in relationships. Know what you want, and then let the law take care of the rest. Because the law responds to pictures. It responds to strong emotions as well as thinking. So put the ones that you want to experience in your life into the law, and that's what you'll receive back. Let the law take care of it. Much better than trying to do it ourselves. And if you don't believe me, look at your life and see what you don't like, and see that patterns of things in your life that keep happening over and over again. The equivalent of dying before going into battle for us today is to accept, as if accepting a gift, these statements. Life does not turn out the way it should. Life does not turn out the way it shouldn't. Life simply turns out the way it turns out. And Tracy Goss, author of The Last Word on Power, writes, when you accept that life does not turn out the way it should, you are free to take actions that are not constrained by the need to control life, so it turns out the way it should or it shouldn't. You must accept the dying part. The dying, this is the last word on surrender. It's that dying to the old before you can thrive. The new can't come in if we're attached and clinging to the old way of doing things and wishing for a whole different way of living life. We got to let go. That means we got to surrender. And when we let go, that's when this infinite source of possibilities of God moves into our lives. You must feel free to risk your reputation, your income, your position, and even your relationships. Because all of these might be at stake when you step out of that box. I know I did it. Those of you who know me know I did it. And you know what? I did it because I was pulled out into a greater expression for me to truly be authentic as a minister, as a spiritual being, to follow the talk that we talk about every Sunday, that we teach in the classes, to be in integrity in my life, so that, wow, limitless possibilities took place, and they still are taking place. Never could have planned it, but what I had was the idea of what I wanted to feel. And so that's what the universe responded to, but I had to get out of my own way. I had to let go of the comfort zone. And that is scary. It really is frightening, but it's so worth it. It really is. That's surrender. That's surrendering the old, dying to the old so that we can experience the new, and we can all do this. So when you take these risks, when you realize that in the long run you really have nothing to lose, do you? If it serves you, keep it. This does take, though, a tremendous amount of faith and courage. And Ernest Holmes said, the soul must make a complete surrender of itself to the Spirit. Completely surrendering. This is what I want to feel. I'm planting the seed of freedom. I'm planting the seed of joy. And however the universe wants to outline it for me, I am open and receptive to it. With this attitude, any perceived threats will cease to hold you back. Because in the end, you will see, they do not affect the outcome of your life. Like the samurai, you can face death today because you know the outcome. You're not attached to the way it should be. You know the outcome is that God's highest and best good is unfolding in my life. And in the end, it's always going to be the same. It's always going to be the same. Life turns out the way it does because there is a power and a presence for good. And this is what we believe, this is what we teach. There's this power for this presence for good in the universe, which is God. And in the end, everything is in divine order. Everything is, and if you allow it, always for our highest good. Always. So accepting that you can't control the outcome is not the end. It's not a point of, why bother then? Why do I bother? Rather, it's the opposite. That's the point of pure potentiality. To use Deepak Chopra's phrase, if we realize we can't control the end anyway, then why not just go for it? Step up and step out. Step up and step out. We are free to play full out in creating and implementing an extraordinary future. Free from the fear about how things should turn out. This is the surrender part. Letting go of how things should turn out. And that's why we're calling it the last word on surrenders. We set the intention. We're specific in how we wish to create. And then we let go of the outcome. We just know it's going to unfold for our highest good, knowing this. This is letting go of how it should turn out. Let go, let God is true, surrendering, and his surrenders are resistance to change. Our attachment to the way things should be. Our way of doing it, and makes room for God's will to take place. Trusting it will always be so much better than we could ever imagine for ourselves, because that's what I found out. And many times when I've stepped back and let go, stuff took place that I could never have imagined or planned. I'm sure you've all had that experience. When you let just say, uncle, I've done it. Step back, whew, it's waiting there. It's there the whole time. Surrender leads to holding a new type of conversation with ourselves. So here are the elements, and then I'm going to finish up. Here are the elements of that conversation, because I don't want to go on all afternoon. It's beautiful. If we indeed have nothing to lose, then who are we to be? What choices do we have between now and the time we leave this planet? Remember, we die from one experience and are born into another. We do the choosing and the law does the outlining. If you remember nothing else, remember that. We do the choosing and the law of effect, of attraction, of whichever law, does the outlining. It fills it in, all the good. We now have the opportunity to choose to thrive. Not just survive, not just strive. Now we can thrive for the rest of our lives when we remember. It doesn't have to be the exact way we think it should be. We must be the vehicle through which God fully expresses. And there is no room for this good to express when we're so attached to the way it should be. The impossible then, the minute we get out of our own ways, the impossible becomes the possible. Because we have truly surrendered our soul to spirit, our way of doing things. when we release the idea of how things should or should not be, then we have let go of thinking we need to control the outcome. And this truly is, try a little of it. It truly is letting go and letting God. And that's the last word on surrender for today. And so it is.